Told you I tried to watch this movie, but ended up just not doing it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, it's a great movie. Gene Hackman.
I know.
I mean, can't not like Gene Hackman.
You can't deny cops chasing down heroin dealers.
Hell yes. These guys didn't do heroin, though.
And we're back at the Sports Experience Podcast. I'm Chris Quinn, one of your hosts, with my good buddy Dom DiTolla, the other host. And we're going to get right into this episode. We got a hockey episode for you.
Yes, we do.
The French Connection. That's what I was talking about leading into this episode. They did not do heroin like in the movies.
No,
this
they didn't.
was essentially the Sabres' only good team.
Pretty much. Like, when you look at the history of the Buffalo Sabres as a hockey franchise, you really have that era with Dominic Hasek, then maybe kind of a decent run in the mid-2000s or whatever. But, like, this was the era of Sabres hockey that you can hang your hat on, despite the fact that they didn't win a title.
Yep.
This is one of the best front lines in hockey history. All young players, all good, and all Quebecois.
Yeah. Well, I found it interesting was other teams would praise this line.
Oh, everybody. From
So,
Bobby Clark to
yeah.
Phil Esposito. I mean, everybody loved this team.
That's something that has to be so, especially in hockey, but they were beating teams or getting beaten by teams, and teams would be like, yeah, that French line, though, man. Like, that's what they would bring up in press conferences because they were so likable.
Yeah, and the reason they called this line the French Connection, you had a center, left winger, and right winger, is in 1972, all three players come together on this team, which is an expansion team in 1970. But the reason they call it the French Connection line is, as I stated before, is all three players are from the Canadian state of, or province, I guess is what those people are calling it now, of Quebec.
Yes. So essentially, we see a couple of these guys played as juniors together.
Yeah, this group was together from 1972 to 1979, which is a golden era of Buffalo Sabres hockey. They made the postseason from 1972-73 to 1984-85, all but one season. And
Yeah.
that was when one of the players was hurt. And as you had stated, you are right. Gil Perreault from Victoriaville, Quebec, and Rick Martin of Verdun, Quebec, both were juniors on the Canadiens junior hockey league team.
I actually saw that Gilberto Perreault.
Gilbert Perreault.
Actually lived with Rick for almost like a year with his family because like you were traveling a shit ton and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And they essentially were friends. And I found this so interesting. They were never on the same line in juniors.
And that's what I always found weird. When I had read that, I'm like, these dudes, when you watch their, highlights and games when they're playing for Buffalo, you're like, what were they even thinking? They had such a great rapport with each other.
Exactly.
And the three players we're talking about, Gil Perreault from Victoriaville, Rick Martin from Verdun, and later, coming in 1972, is Rene Robert.
Yeah, so they actually come
from Trois-Rivières.
They come 1 year after another. Actually,
pretty much, yeah.
I actually really like this. So the Sabres become a team in 1970. They get this, is it the expansion draft or the entry draft?
It's the entry draft that year. And what people need to know about this entry draft is you have two new teams. You have the Buffalo Sabres and you have the Vancouver Canucks. And this is the first year where the Montreal Canadiens do not have exclusive rights to any Quebecois junior players.
Yes.
And this is very important for Buffalo because the best player in this draft is Gil Perreault. And fantastic center. Fantastic center. Had just the all-around skill to make him the Hall of Famer that he eventually came to be. But because this is the 1970 entry draft and you have two expansion franchises, they decided to play a little game of roulette wheel with the two of them.
Well, I thought this was interesting. So they did a roulette wheel to see who would get the first pick. I want to bring up how ridiculous that is that Montreal had priority over these youngsters for so many years.
Which is ridiculous. It's probably why they were so good and they've won over 20-plus Stanley Cups.
Yes.
And French Canada, if you haven't heard from any of our other episodes, quite the hotbed of hockey talent.
Yeah, it's like you're essentially like, and I've been trying to do this, is do soccer references to these other ones, like how you do, you know what I mean? But it's like pretty much being like, oh, no, we have priority to all Brazilian players. And
right?
You're just like, wait a second, what? It's just like, no, if we want a Brazilian player, we're gonna pick him up, we're gonna put him on our team. And we see the Canadians have this dominant, essentially, like you were saying, like 30, 40 years, and then it drops off pretty heavily.
Yeah, post-1970. Granted, in the mid-70s, they were really good, and then even the 80s and 90s. But, like, you're never going to see the dominance that they once had when they were an original six team and just being able to pluck these Quebecois players.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this roulette wheel, though, I want to talk about this.
Please,
so
yes.
They give Vancouver 2 through 7, I believe.
Yeah.
And they give the Sabres 8 through 12.
Yeah.
They spin the wheel. It lands on 1. The commissioner congratulates Vancouver because he's essentially looking at it like, oh, it's a low number. Vancouver won. And then the president of the Sabres is like, hold on, can we look at that again? There wasn't even supposed to be a 1. And then he's like, oh, I guess that's 11.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's 11. That's our pick.
Yeah, because there wasn't 1, and the only number that would have given another spin was number 7.
Oh, okay, yes.
Yeah. Because it was
7's
2
neutral.
through 6 and 8 through 12.
Yep,
yeah.
okay.
So they ended up spinning and winning for Gil Perreault, 6'1", 185 pounds. He's everything you're looking for in a center at that time as far as stick handling and the ability to skate quickly. That was a big dude. And this is the time where you're starting to see the NHL turn into playing in a phone booth with teams like the Big Bad Flyers of, the mid-'70s.
Who they
do run into. But Bobby Clark had many nice things, actually, which he's not a guy that hands out compliments, but for Mr. Perreault, he had a lot.
I thought it was interesting, though, when they were talking about Perreault, he was like one of these first centers that wasn't slow, that could outskate defensemen, like, visibly.
Oh, yeah, totally. And his first year, he just absolutely pops off. He's the Rookie of the Year. He wins the Calder Trophy.
Yep.
Even though the team is not necessarily good because they're an expansion franchise, you're like, this is our franchise guy we're hanging our hat on, and we're excited for it.
Now, let me say this. Can you even imagine if you went to the Canadiens in this? Because I feel like
that would have been unfair.
Didn't they win 76, 77, 78, 79, something crazy like that?
Yeah, they had won a few under Scotty Bowman.
There
who
you go.
Became later the Sabres coach. Yes, indeed, they did.
I'm just saying, like, that's just so unfair. So has a great rookie season. Then this next season, they go out and draft his fucking buddy.
Yeah, his fucking buddy, Rick Martin, as they called him, Rico Martin, or
in Buffalo.
If you're from north of the border, Rick Martin.
Yeah, that's how he wants you to pronounce it. But when you're in Buffalo, they're like, oh, Ricky Martin?
Yeah, Ricky Martin.
Yeah, we love him.
But they end up getting him 5th overall because they're not necessarily a great team. They're just trying to piece people together. But he's like the perfect complement to Perreault because he's your sniper.
Well, this is something that I found so interesting. The coach said was, I wanted people that could keep up skating-wise with Perreault. Yeah. And I knew Martin could because he grew up with him. And this is what we found so ridiculous was they never played on the same line. And as soon as they played on the same line, as soon as they got on that line, they just clicked.
Oh, yeah. No. I mean, you have your center and left winger ready-made.
Yeah.
I mean, they have a chemistry together. And that's what everyone talks about when you talk about the French Connection line is just the chemistry of those frontline players. And you see Buffalo accumulating this talent and starting to ascend and really starting to make some noise. But it's the following year where they get the third and final piece to this little puzzle.
Rene Robert. So I want to talk about him because he was their...
He was the oldest one of the 3, actually.
I feel like he was their lesser star, if you will. Like he almost did like their dirty work.
He was their dirty work guy. He was a points gathering guy.
Yeah.
Which led to him playing and complementing the other two scorers.
Exactly.
Because he could get the assists, but he was also so clutch as far as his ability to knock the puck in the net.
Yes.
But he was also doing the dirty work, as you said, because he was on their top penalty killing line.
Yes.
He was the guy that could get in the scrums and really, settle business out there on the ice. And he came over in a trade in 1971, 1972 with the Pittsburgh Penguins. He was kind of, one of those journeyman type guys who was kind of knocking around the league early in his career, but he found a perfect home with two of his Quebecois brothers on that line in Buffalo. And in 1972, when they all come together, as we were talking about before, it comes out a year after the Academy Award-winning movie, The French Connection.
And then they get labeled for it, which is so accurate.
I love good sports nicknames, man. I love it. I love it so much.
No, I love it because it's just so ridiculously accurate, and it gets people behind this new franchise, this Sabres franchise, because that's what these guys were exciting to watch.
They were young and exciting.
Yep.
Like the window and possibilities for greatness were endless regarding these three. And it really started to show, as I had said before, from 72 to 73 to 84, 85. Granted, a couple of the guys didn't last necessarily as long, and we'll probably get into it. That's just kind of when Perreault is at the end of his career.
Yeah, but Perreault lasts the whole time, and he's a Sabre his whole career.
He is. Which is even better.
Yes, I love that.
But we're talking about these guys, and it's just like you've built yourself the best front line in hockey, and you've built yourself with three guys who are so different but have such chemistry that they can really make some noise in the Adams division.
Yeah, no, I definitely like that, and I saw something about that, how they were definitely three different individuals, which is why it works so well.
Yeah, no, and they start winning. They start winning early, and they start winning often once it all coalesces.
And I want to say this. So this is 72, 73, 73, 74. They're getting into the playoffs. They're definitely winning. But then their big season is 74, 75.
74, 75, yeah. It was the Buffalo's first of their only two in franchise history, actually, cup runs.
Yep.
Oddly enough. And all three are just absolutely kicking ass and dominating for them.
This is their best season. So all three of them are in top 10 of scoring.
Yes.
All three of them are in top 10 of points. You know what I mean? Like they are, like you said, they're the best front line. If hockey was set up a little differently, which I love that it's not, they would have been better, but their other lines weren't.
And they all worked so well with each other because that was the first year someone got 100 points in a season, and it was Robert.
I was going to say it wasn't.
Perreault later had one, but the way that they distributed the puck and the way that they worked together, all three were just racking up points the entire season, and Buffalo just goes insane over it.
Yeah, no, this is definitely where Buffalo gets behind this team, because it must be kind of weird to have this kind of new franchise team. And I mean, we just see that this 74-75 season is their season.
Hey everybody, just want to take a quick break to let you know that our Sports Experience podcast is brought to you by Engle Studio here, and they're here in Tucson for all your recording needs.
Oh, it totally was. I mean, they go to the playoffs, and to get to the Cup, they have to dispatch the team that probably would have drafted or had been able to draft all three in Montreal.
Yes.
And it was Robert in that in the clinching game who scored the game-winning goal.
Oh, yes. And this is something else I want to say is this Canadians, to get to this Stanley Cup in this era, you essentially had to beat this Montreal team.
Yeah.
And this is the only time that they did it, which is like people are saying that the only knock on Perreault's career is that he didn't have a Stanley Cup. But if you look at the teams winning Stanley Cups, it's pretty amazing that they made one.
But all three were all-stars that year. Do you know
Yes.
how many times you see that now where all three guys on your first line make an all-star team? It doesn't happen.
No. That's what I mean. That line essentially was their production. Like that team's production came from that line.
Oh, totally. And when you look at all three of the players, while they played before and afterwards, because we're talking about a 1972 to 1979 window, and we'll go into that after a little bit later, is they all had the most productive seasons of their career while they played together.
Yes. It was obvious that was their best chemistry, their best line, you know what I mean? And you were saying, like, for every single one of them. Like,
yeah. Because they were all all-stars. I mean, Perreault, obviously an 8-time all-star.
Yeah, he was obviously the standout, but still.
He was the captain, of the entire ship. But they make it all the way to the Stanley Cup Finals, and they play the Blackhawks. And do you want to get into the Fog game at all?
Oh, man, the Fog game. Yeah, that one was so interesting.
At the old Buffalo Auditorium.
Because it was so hot that essentially like the ice was melting and making a fog set.
And the humidity in the arena, and it was hot because when they play the Stanley Cup Finals, it's always in June. I'm assuming Buffalo is super humid at that time of year. And during this game, fog starts coming off the ice. This is Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Finals between the Sabres and Blackhawks. Pardon me, I believe it's the Flyers.
No, yeah, it's the Flyers.
Yeah, sorry.
Yep, that's all right.
I got to
you got those mixed up, but the Flyers, and I saw during this game, because it goes to overtime.
Yeah.
And I saw that they are saying essentially like crash the net as hard as you can.
Yeah.
And this is what's so crazy, like crash the net as hard as you can and swipe, because you don't know if the puck's there.
Exactly.
So they're just skating in and just swiping with their stick. And I mean, it sucks to think that these are conditions for a Stanley Cup, but it's also one of those things that's just like, well, it's never going to happen again. And it's pretty fucking awesome to see.
Right. And if you see video footage of this, it's like crazy. It's almost like the Fog Bowl in the 88 playoffs between the Bears and Eagles.
Yeah. You can't see, they were talking about it being especially bad around the goal too. So you can't see shit, nothing.
No, you can't see anything. And the most fitting way that this game ends is Robert scores on a goal assisted by his 2 other line mates.
Yep.
Which is just like, oh, French Connection in action. Game over.
Yeah, I saw highlights from that game, and it's pretty ridiculous.
Yeah, but I mean, these 3 all together really created hockey in Buffalo. They created a winner. They created something to be proud of, and they took it to the next level despite the fact they weren't able to get over the hump, which is so sad. But they had the misfortune of becoming good when you had Philadelphia getting good.
Philadelphia, Montreal,
and the Islanders finally developing. So it was just like the misfortune of time for these 3 players.
Yep. So they lose to the Flyers 4-2 in the Stanley Cup, and this is the only time that they make it to the Stanley Cup. But still throughout these years, so like you were saying, they break up in 79. Teams are still like, and it's such a testament to them that other teams will still comment on this line.
Yeah, like everyone from that era will have nothing negative to say about how good these guys were.
Yes, exactly.
And I think that's super important. And they were consistent playoff participants every year. Like, you knew that these guys, the 3 of them, were good for 80-plus points a season, sometimes in triple digits.
Yes.
And that's what I find so fascinating is it's hard to find that kind of chemistry in hockey. And you had 3 guys from the same region of Canada, 2 of which played juniors together, and you get them on your team, and they're just scoring machines.
Yeah.
Even with Robert playing on the penalty kill, he was still the first Sabres player to have over 100 points in a season.
Yeah. I mean, they're all 3 of them are retired for the Sabres, which is definitely appropriate because they were the Sabres for so long. Like, there were no other, stars there for forever. I want to talk about old Martin.
Yeah.
I want to talk about this injury.
This is kind of what sinks the entire operation. A couple of his unfortunate injuries. It's not like any of them were his fault.
No, not at all. But this is how hockey was back then. So there was this one where he gets hooked and he gets brought down, and he essentially gets brought down pretty much like head first onto the ice.
Yeah.
and he loses consciousness for like a pretty long time, and it's a horrible head injury.
And not only that, it's down the road he gets in that goalie collision, which tears the cartilage in his knee.
Yeah,
and this was at a time when guys aren't wearing helmets or even legitimate padding.
This is what I wanted to say was his teammates said that his injuries over the years were so bad that all of them started to wear helmets. So you saw the Sabres players the younger ones, really start to wear helmets and these extra padding because this one guy just kept getting fucked up.
Well, no, and I mean, this is a guy who still holds franchise records for hat tricks.
Yep.
4-goal games, 40-goal seasons, consecutive 40-goal seasons. And then he's tied for first with 50-goal seasons and then owns the 50-goal consecutive seasons mark. Like, he's your sniper out there. He's the guy, get him the puck, it's going to go in the net. Nice entry passes, stuff like that. He's your guy.
When he kind of goes down to injury, you can see that this line kind of breaks up.
Yeah, and, in addition to him, you have Perreault, who's a Hall of Famer, who in this 7-year window had 617 points and was a plus 60 plus or minus on the ice.
That is so crazy.
That is just dominance right there. That's just your captain doing everything. And then you have your other guy picking up all the dirty work and just first 100 points, guys.
Yeah,
I keep
love
bringing
that.
up, but finished his career with 702 points. I mean, what you're working with is just pure talent.
Yeah.
And they had a nice run. I mean, I want to interject in 75-76. They play against the Soviets. The Sabres play against the Soviet national team with the French connection line. And I believe they beat them, 12-6 in that game? It was 12-6. Which is still the biggest margin of victory against a Soviet national team ever.
Yeah.
Not even the Miracle on Ice could do that shit. But you got the French connection just sending it around, yelling out French curse words and kicking ass. Yeah, 12-6. And in that game, the three of them had 4 goals and 5 assists combined. 9 of your team's points comes from 3 guys. That's incredible.
That's what I mean. The 70 Sabres, the production came from the French. It's a testament to these guys. That's why I love. I want to bring up before I forget it. Martin owns this bar. Martin owns this bar, and it's called the Slap Shots.
Yeah.
That's what it's called. And they have the movie Slap Shots on a loop in the bar that they play.
It sounds like my kind of place.
Yes. And it's just so if you go in there and you're like, oh, the hockey game's on, they're like, no, Slap Shots is on. Like
Paul Newman, Slapshot.
Yes.
Perfect movie. Hanson Brothers.
Oh, I love it.
Oh, so good. But by 79, the wheels start coming off with Scotty Bowman in charge.
Yeah.
And apparently changes need to be made, despite the fact, Perreault finishes his career with over 1,300 points. By 1990, his numbers retired and he's in the NHL Hall of Fame. Martin's injuries, and by 79, Robert is 31 years old.
Yeah.
So they're thinking that maybe some changes need to be made, even though the players were like, man, I wish the front office maybe tried to really go after it and try and win with one last shot towards the late 70s. And by 1979, Robert's traded.
Yep.
Yeah, he's traded
They feel like that's the piece that needs to be moved out.
Yeah, that's the piece. And October 5th, 1979, he's traded to the Colorado Rockies, not the baseball franchise,
There you go.
but the future New Jersey Devils for a defenseman. And that's when the French connection breaks up.
Yeah.
And that's what kind of makes it sad, because you think maybe there's more bullets left in the gun. Maybe these guys who at times were first, second team, all NHL.
Yeah.
When they played together, all 3 of them, not just 1, not just 2, but all 3 of them.
Yes.
And when they dump Robert, Martin's next on the list.
Yeah, so
due to the injuries.
You can almost kind of see that once that line breaks up, it's almost no reason to keep anybody other than Perreault. Like it's kind of sad because they really could have had a better shot at the cup if, a couple of other great teams weren't out there, if they had built a little bit more, if, that kind of shit.
They could have had maybe one or two more runs left in them. But by 1981 March 10th, Martin is traded to the Los Angeles Kings.
Yep.
And at that point, Perreault's left with his dick in his hands and just left to fend for himself and still play well, still play at an all-star level, still keep kicking ass. But at that point, the French Connection is over, and all you have, despite all of the accolades and despite all of the incredible stats that they put up, one failed cup run.
Yep.
And it makes you wonder, what if?
What if? They're definitely a what if team. One of those, because everybody says it's one of the best lines from that era on a team that just didn't make it.
And that's the saddest part, is all three guys, Perreault had over 1,300 points, but Robert and Martin had over 700 points themselves over their careers. I mean, they were productive-ass players and stars.
Well, I want to bring this up is I don't think they would have been so productive on other teams, on other lines.
Oh, yeah, no.
That's what makes this line so special.
They had a chemistry, or for lack of a better word, connection with each other. There you go. That ensured that they would all be playing at their highest level and all be dominating. And it's interesting because while Perreault is the only Hall of Famer, and his numbers retired, on the same night in 1995, both Martin and Robert had their numbers retired.
Yep.
So you had 11, 14, and 7, I believe, which will never be worn by any other Sabres player.
Which I really like I felt like it was classy from the Sabres, acknowledging like, hey, it wasn't just Perreault, it was this line. I want to say this, he actually came, so I think he retired 84, 85.
Yeah, Perreault did, yeah.
And then came out of retirement because there was a new pension plan that got put into place.
Yeah, he played the extra season, yeah.
And they said that he played 20 games because you had to have played 20 games in the 85-86 season. And he was just like, well, fine, I'll come out for that. And I thought that was one of those interesting things where you're like, God, just give him the money.
Well, and Sabres management was probably like, yeah, you might not be good enough to play, but you get your 20 games in. You're the face of this franchise since the very beginning. You're our first star.
Exactly, yes. No, they loved him. He had some great international games, too, though.
Hell yes, with Team Canada, guys like Guy Lafleur, and I think even Wayne Gretzky, too.
Yes, he said that when he played with Gretzky and this amazing Canadian team is they would just, had so much fun, essentially. That's what it was, because everybody was a star,
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, Team Canada in anything hockey related is always going to be good. Like we talked in the Lemieux episode where he was like, "Oh, I'm good now."
Yes, no, it's so interesting because he came from a team, great line, not a great team. He went to played international and he was just like, "Oh, this is what a great team is,"
Yeah, and all of their peers at the time said this is the best front line that's existed in hockey, and you can make an argument ever since then it's the best front line
that's
to
interesting.
ever exist in hockey.
Yeah, because normally you will see 1, 2 guys, but you don't necessarily see all 3. Yeah, I love it. And you don't necessarily see all 3 from the same region.
Yeah. I mean, Quebec is a very large state or province or whatever you want to call it. Yeah, but I mean, as far as land area, but I mean these, bigger cities where they're from. These bigger areas.
No, I mean,
you're going to find them. But, they end up not winning cups, but they all end up, Sabres heroes. I kind of wanted to go into the end of Martin's career.
Oh, okay.
As far as, he retired. Great player. Not in the Hall of Fame, but a great player. He ended up going into the business world, but he ended up dying of a massive heart attack. Towards let's see, it was March 13th, 2011.
Okay.
And it's important that he died. He's the only one of the 3 who's died.
Yeah.
The issue is, when they did the autopsy, they found out he had level 2 CTE.
Oh,
and
wow.
Had no idea. I guess he wasn't showing symptoms or, the types of things associated with CTE.
Sure.
But it was kind of one of hockey's first run-ins with brain injuries and hits because, like you were saying, hit his head on the ice,
Yep.
which injured him pretty good. You know, those guys will take shots.
Well, what they said was that injury put the fear in other Sabres to wear helmets. So, I mean, if you can even believe it, they're skating around without helmets, taking real hits. So, yeah, the CTE, it has to have been a real thing for some of these guys.
I'm sure both of his other teammates, probably have it whether they know it or not. I'm
Yep.
not saying they do, but there's likely a good chance if you're playing hockey in the 1970s without a helmet, particularly during that bruising era. So,
Yeah, no, it's a sad note, but I mean, have to give it up for these three guys as hockey players and men because they're definitely great. And I love to reiterate this. I love when guys are from, essentially same backgrounds.
Right.
And they come together and they play and they click. It's awesome.
it was like just, people talk Stockton to Malone. This was like the Stockton to Malone plus, I don't know, whoever the hell from the Jazz was playing at that time, but of hockey.
Hornacek.
Hornacek. Yeah, you just have that, mental connection, French connection.
Ooh.
But I mean, you have that mental, like, we're 2 steps ahead because we know exactly what the other person's going to do. And
Exactly.
I mean,
Exactly.
these guys in Buffalo are treated like kings. I mean, they're the equivalent of all those guys from those 4 straight Super Bowl teams. There's a statue outside of the arena that they built in 2012.
Yes.
I mean, it's an iconic photo after their series win against the Canadiens. I mean, it's absolutely perfect.
Yeah. No, you're right. And this, like we've been saying, this is where the Sabres franchise essentially established themselves. So they could have been moved. You know what I mean?
They could have been moved dozens of times probably in the last 30 years.
Yes.
If they hadn't had that quick success off the bat with notable stars who captured the city's hearts.
Exactly.
And you're playing in a town with only 2 pro teams, and they're still regarded as heroes there.
No, and they should be. Hey, everybody, this is just a stock message at the end of every episode. We hope you enjoyed whatever athlete and or team that episode was about. Just want to say, give us a quick follow on all social media. We have a YouTube channel, the Sports Experience Podcast, and we're on Instagram, DiTolla Dominic, and myself, C. Quinn Comedy. So give us a follow all around. We're always recording right here at Engle Studio. Thank you all very much.